If you are new to GlobeTrotting, be sure to hit that subscribe button, it would certainly mean a lot. For not many airlines, the Airbus A380 worked as a plane. Ultimately, that's reflected obviously in its more poorer sales performance, alongside its rather short overall stay in production. Given its scale, we do know the A380 was never going to be an aircraft that, say, would take in thousands of units ordered. However, the plane maker may have definitely had higher hopes for it when it was at the all-important drawing board stages. Over the years, several companies have publicly discussed the aircraft's impact on their operations, and the reviews haven't always been all that positive. One standout for the positive side, however, has been Australian flag carrier Qantas, which, even during the pandemic, continued to support the aircraft, firmly believing its future was within its network. This unwavering commitment, might I add, and resilience has raised many different questions. Why did the airline order the plane? What's its story been, and what is next? What's interesting to observe is that the majority of airlines that have backed the Airbus A380 really do point towards one key factor about this aircraft as why it is so favoured. And for Qantas, it was the redefining of the product they would put out to their customers when travelling. They viewed the A380 as a fantastic game changer, and it was clear from the beginning, when they first welcomed the type in the late 2000s to now, that they've kept with the same thing. The sheer scale of the plane was going to enable them greater cost savings, because that capacity would present them with new opportunities in terms of redefining what it meant to travel, flying into major cities around the world with such a large aircraft, meant fewer flights, higher capacity. Again, these are markets which are slot restricted. While the A380 is a fan favourite, especially from the perspective of being a blank canvas to push the boundaries of the cabin product, when examining Qantas, you'd argue they haven't necessarily pushed it to the same extent as others. It's really been a modest configuration, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't still an integral reason for why they purchased it. Furthermore, the A380, while seen as a fantastic plane, had a little bit of uncertainty surrounding it. It's important to remember that Qantas's order for the aircraft actually extended beyond 12 units that they would take delivery of. The company had initial plans to purchase 20, but wouldn't go through with the remaining 8, as more than evident by taking a look at their fleet. This interesting twist came as the airline continued to defer deliveries over time, seemingly content with the 12 that they previously had. This absolutely isn't out of the ordinary for companies to do with new aircraft, but you'd argue maybe even more so with a plane on this scale, where if they had taken those remaining 8 units, the potential economics of flying them could see the negatives outweigh the positives. They saw 12 as probably the more ideal number. These 12 units throughout their time in the Qantas fleet have helped bring truckloads of capacity to markets around the world, and yes, that'll focus on the likes of London, Los Angeles, Singapore, and some other cities too. With the plane departing from Sydney and Melbourne, the 2 largest cities in Australia, and focal points for the Qantas international network. But when the global pandemic hit, many were obviously concerned about the future of this type in the airline fleet. I'd argue it was a pretty similar feeling with any airline that flew the A380, bar maybe Emirates, and for that matter, let me extend that onwards to any quad-engined and maybe older wide-body. After all, you have to consider that Australia was hit pretty hard with restrictions during those years, and many quite simply couldn't see a world in which Qantas would want to return such a plane in an age where efficiency was king, demand was low, and they could go with better fuel-efficient aircraft. Well, despite rejecting the 8 more units, the airline was relatively straightforward with its intent for the aircraft throughout, saying that it would be crucial to its recovery. As Australia was decimated as a country, Qantas knew that eventually when they were to see recovery, they would need significant capacity, and fast, to increase their recovery chances. As other markets returned to pre-pandemic levels quicker, it meant that the company could utilise the capacity benefits of the A380 to quickly transport people to their desired locations that obviously they had been unable to reach for a matter of years. They saw it as a win-win. Their patience and support throughout the pandemic of this plane was evident, with executives stating that they believed the A380 was needed in their fleet, and that there would be opportunities when demand recovered, and that is precisely what happened. Another factor that I just feel is worth exploring, and that is actually completely moving away from the script that I had written, relates to the Boeing 787 delivery delays. Boeing and Airbus have had many supply chain issues, which has meant airlines such as Qantas have been unable to get aircraft in on time, and for the Australian flag carrier, this related to the 787, so while there were aircraft ready, delays ensued, so the A380 provided them with a quicker solution than awaiting those aircraft deliveries. And even if they hadn't let's say they hadn't returned the A380 back to service, well, you can make the pretty safe assumption that capacity would have been even worse than many argued it was. While the reactivation process has been very publicly revealed as a bit of a nightmare, considering these planes were in long-term storage and required a lot of lengthy maintenance time to get them reactivated, they've been beneficial. So what's next for the A380 at the airline? Well, the planes will fly into the next decade. That's all but been confirmed. However, like other airlines that have this plane in their armory, plans to phase out it are well underway as well. In fact, in 2023, or last year depending on when you're watching this, Qantas confirmed its retirement plans for the type. From 2032 onwards, the Super Jumbo will be phased out and replaced by the incoming next-gen A350s that were ordered, and not to be mistaken, for the purchase of A350s that were solely done for Project Sunrise. While retirement is now on the cards, so technically is every plane that enters service. That is the circle of life. But Qantas knows the A380 still has much to give, with over a decade more of flying, and it will fly right around the world, serving markets that need this high-capacity airliner. The next era of aircraft will allow the airline to maximize efficiency, and while it will be out with the old and in with the new, that'll have associated benefits. Also, while nothing can replace the A380, Qantas internally deems the A350 as a suitable candidate for long-term fleet renewal, and that will fly with the 787, serving their route network for a host of missions. Qantas's A380 story is filled with the ups and downs, including a commitment to overhaul how they were perceived, bump up capacity, and really make Australia more reachable with the Flying Kangaroo. Throughout the stay, while the early days saw deliberation over an aircraft order, their commitment to the aircraft has been unwavering, highlighted during the pandemic, when they stood true as, you've got to remember, one of the few airlines that believed the A380 had a future with them, and were not necessarily every given month publicly criticizing it. What are your thoughts? What do you think the legacy of the A380 will be at Qantas, and do you believe it's been a purchase that has paid off for them? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and if you'd like me to explore any other airline's relationship with a specific aircraft, you can drop that down below in the comments. Thank you very much for tuning in and your support here on GlobeTrotting. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you in a couple of days for your latest aviation analysis. And we'll fly.